Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday morning, February 7th, 2023. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Board of Supervisors. And we do not have a willing participant for our invocation this morning, so I'd just like to ask that we stand for a moment of silence, and then we'll move on to our Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, and now we'll have a roll call. I guess we'll have to do that voice.
Lind. Present. Anderson. Long.
Here.
Leaf.
Present.
Cook. Adams. Burning. Attino.
Present.
Fiedler. Osnes.
Present.
Counter.
Present.
Hanson.
Here.
Shirley.
Present.
Telejohn.
Present.
Carlson.
Present.
Barkalow. Swanepoel.
Present.
Van Summeren.
Here.
And Ramberg.
Okay, public comment. I didn't get any cards. Do we have anyone from the public that would like to address the board this morning? Any public comment? I'll try one more time. Don't be shy. Any public comment? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I'm actually going to pull the minutes from our previous meeting in December out of the consent agenda. There's a little minor clarification or correction that needs to be made. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda less the minutes from the previous meeting. Supervisor Osnes, a second. Supervisor Counter. And I think a voice vote would be sufficient. Now, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The correction for the minutes was on page 7 of your packet under the request for future agenda items. It referenced Supervisor Hanson's request to provide a COVID review, and actually that was Supervisor Burning. No, all due respect to Supervisor Hanson. So I just wanted to make that correction on the minutes. With that correction, do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Supervisor Van Summeren, any second? Supervisor Shirley. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right, we are now ready for our financial report from our county administrator.
Thank you, Chair Long. Just getting to it in the packet. So the financial report is for the month of December. At year end, we do end up rolling a lot of things early in the beginning of the year back into the previous year. So a lot of the grant revenue that we're still expecting to receive, we take the expenses all the way through the end of the year, submit those grant reimbursement requests. So they trickle in over January, February, and sometimes even into March. So there's a lot of revenues that are coming back. And then we also have some expenses. So we're an accrual basis accounting. And so any payroll expenses that we have on the first or even the second payroll check that's paid in January are for hours that are worked in December. So we're going to make a journal entry to roll those back in. Those have not been posted yet either. So while these are December 2022 numbers, there's a lot of changes coming to this yet. What I can say, though, overall, with a high degree of confidence, the county will finish in the black. So I think we're in good shape. I think there will be a couple of departments that will get a visit from me to talk about their specific departments, but the county as a whole, I think will be just fine financially once all of the numbers are in. Are there any questions that I'm able to answer on the financial report at all? I did want to just highlight two other quick items then. With the Government Center project, bids for Package 4 are going out at the end of February. That'll be the biggest and I think the last big piece of the project. Those bids are due then at the end of March. So we will have a full status update at the April County Board meeting, highlighting what those bids are, and we should have a really clear picture then where we are in relation to budget. So looking forward to that. And then I will just say one last call out for the Economic Development Corporation banquet. I'd sent everyone an email. I do have a couple of tickets left though for that banquet. I think it's on the 16th, it's a Thursday. So if you are interested in attending, just let me know. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Chair Long.
Any other quick questions for Administrator Witt? Okay, we'll move on to our first business item, confirmation of County Administrator's appointment of a new Facilities Director. Can we start with a motion to approve the appointment? Supervisor Hanson, second. Supervisor Osnes. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to recommend the appointment of Taylor Mavis as a Facilities Director. Taylor's been with the county for about 8 years now. He's worked his way up. I think he's held pretty much every job in facilities by now. So Facilities Director is the current one we're recommending him for. And I think he's been doing it for the last few months on an interim basis, and everything's been going good so far. So. If there's any questions, or if you want a speech from Taylor or something, he's here today. All right, Taylor, why don't you come on up and... No, come on, Taylor.
You'd like to hear it. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let's vote on the motion to approve Taylor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Taylor. All right, we'll move on to a resolution approving a quitclaim deed between the county and the city of Glenwood City. Can we have a motion to approve this, please? Supervisor Counter, second. Supervisor Van Summeren, thank you.
I will inform the board of this resolution. So there's a parcel of land, 1.06 acres in the city of Glenwood that was missed when we transferred some land between the county and the city regarding the fairgrounds. In what?
What year?
I think 1996. And so it was brought to my attention by the attorney for the city that this was incorrect. We did some research on it. It turns out that yes, in fact, this is the recycling center for the city of Glenwood City. And so they have been utilizing that property, and it was just missed when we did the transfer. So this quitclaim deed would allow Board Chair Long to quitclaim this 1.06 acres of land from the county to the city of Glenwood City.
Questions? Don't you love these little technicalities? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. On to number 3, resolution authorizing additional step increases for certified nursing assistant positions. Can we have a motion to approve? Supervisor Osnes, a second. Supervisor Hanson. And I guess we'll look to who would like to Supervisor Cook couldn't be with us today, so normally she would be explaining these, but looks like Audrey's going to fill us in.
Hello. All right, so for the additional step increases for CNAs or certified nursing assistants, based on a request from the healthcare campus administrator, HR conducted a wage study for CNAs. Currently, there's a nationwide shortage of this position, and it's really impacted the market rate for the position over the last year. We just wanted to make sure that we were competitive in this area at a minimum basis. So the analysis of that study did show that we are currently paying below market, which has impacted our ability to recruit and retain our CNAs. And so we've had to contract with outside services to keep the healthcare campus running. So based on that information, it's my recommendation that we increase the starting wage from step 5, which is $16.44 an hour, up to step 8, which is $17.53. Also, in order to make that change, I also recommend that we increase the wages for all existing CNAs in order to avoid creating future compression issues. The overall expense is estimated to cost about $62,000. However, our hope is that by being able to increase these wages, we can increase our retention and start to recruit more talent so that we can then increase our staffing levels, which should then increase the number of beds that we have available at the campus to start bringing in additional income to kind of override those expenses and lower the amount of contract services that we have to use, which are also rather expensive. Any questions?
Supervisor Carlson?
How much a year are we spending on contract services? And it could be approximate.
Do you have any idea on that one? A month? Bob is saying hundreds of thousands per month. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Supervisor Osnes?
I don't have a question, but I've got a comment, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, and that being talking with a lot of the CNAs that are up on the campus. Their concern was, you know, with what we're making right now, and I've been here 10 years, I could go to Taco Bell, or not Taco Bell, Domino's or anybody else that's and deliver pizzas, and I can make more delivering pizzas and a tip than I can as a CNA. And that's sad to say. And we are having a hard time. I've talked with Sandy a number of times. We're having a hard time recruiting people. But once we get them back up and we're competitive with everybody else around, I see nothing but very positive things, and we'll have more residents sharing our facility. I hear nothing but positive comments from family members that have called and said, you know, my mom and dad are very grateful to where we're at. And those CNAs and those nurses up there are so kind to everybody and very kind to my mom and dad and our family when we're there. So hats off to them on that.
Supervisor Shirley?
How many FTE CNAs do we have, and how many are we short?
We currently have 32 CNAs, and I think we were short. I don't know if you have that up. I don't have my laptop, but.
Yeah, well, the shortage is really limiting the number of beds that we can fill. So, I mean, we may be short, but we could handle a lot more beyond that.
Just to clarify, how many more CNAs do we need not to have contract services?
Bob says, don't ask me. Just ignore all that thing. Okay, looks like we are approved for 54 FTE, and we currently have 32 on staff. However, that includes probably 0.5s and on-call as well. So I would assume we're probably closer to around 20 full FTEs at this point. so about 30 short.
Supervisor Carlson.
Yeah, I'm not so sure we should be in the nursing home business in the first place, but that aside, since we are, I believe we should pay them more. It seems awfully low.
Yeah, and according to the market study, and really even just in this direct area where they could go to the next town over and get the same type of position, we're low for where our direct competitors are.
Supervisor Rotino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I have a question. If we're spending that kind of money on contracted services, how many of those people are CNAs, and are we competing with that contract in the job market with our own?
It's nearly impossible to compete with contract employees. They typically are paid 3 to 4 times more than regular CNAs. It's traveling services. And so we don't really look at their wages when we're doing market studies because they're so outside the norm.
That's exactly what I thought. So if I'm a certified nurse assistant, why would I want to work for the county at even at the top there, $19.55 an hour, when I can go to a contracted service?
Most of those services are traveling services and limited contracts. So if you're looking for something in the area full-time,
Okay.
that's where you kind of look at regular positions versus contract
I can
positions.
imagine no contracted services could stay here for quite some time.
Yeah, they can continue to renew if they want to stay in the area, yeah.
Okay.
Right,
Thank you.
long-term benefits as well.
Other questions? Supervisor Hanson?
The people who do this job and have done it for less pay than the people who work at Taco Bell or Pizza Hut or wherever, they really do a great job at the St. Croix County Health Center. My dog works there, and I go up there and make sure that he does a good job. So I have a chance. My uncle is in the nursing home there too. So I have a chance to observe what these folks do, and they do a very hard job, and they do an incredibly good job. They do it cheerfully, and I just want to take a chance to commend, because we're talking about it, I don't want to miss the chance to commend Sandy Hackemuller and Krista Nygaard and their staff, because we're lucky to have county employees who are that dedicated under such challenging conditions. So put that on the record.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, Supervisor Rotino?
Thank you. Administrator Witt, you mentioned that there is, because of these positions not being filled, there's a loss of beds, obviously then a loss of revenue. How many beds are we at right now, and as far as full, and what could we be if we bring on these people?
Yeah, I don't know if Bob Rohrt has more up-to-date numbers, but like in our skilled nursing, we're running probably closer to 40 of the 50 beds. The Kitty Roads, we don't have open. There's 10 beds there that we're not filling at all. Those are 0 out of the 10. And then there's the CBRF side, which is filling up. I think it was about 60% capacity the last I had seen.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, I think a voice vote would suffice. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. You might as well stay handy, Audrey. Next business item, resolution amending personnel policies. I'm looking for a motion to approve. Supervisor Counter, second. Supervisor Leaf. I guess it's back to you, Audrey.
All right, so this one is separation from employment policy. Really, we only updated language regarding the long-term sick bank based on the fact that we recently updated that policy, so we just needed to make those two policies match in the information that's provided. So that was the only changes made to this policy.
Questions or comments? Okay. Oh, Supervisor Rotino?
Yes, I'm still a little skeptical about the fact that the long-term sick bank has turned into a retirement fund. And am I correct, this is at full salary when it's cashed in? Because I know St. Paul Public Schools, where my wife is, they've reduced their policy to $100 a day. I mean, some of the teachers make twice or three times that. But it just, how do we go forward and revise the retirement to make retirement and not a bonus off the long-term sick bank? That was my comment, my question.
You want me to address that?
Yeah.
Okay. The long-term sick bank policy as it currently is grandfathered for employees that were hired before, I think it's October 5th of last year, when the policy was changed. So any new employee does not get any LTSB payout upon separation or retirement. So the current policy, though, for employees hired before that is a full payout at retirement eligibility at their final wage rate for any hours that are in the LTSB into a health savings account.
Yeah, we did kind of go through that exercise, if we all recall.
And it was a very large amount of money, I remember.
Yes.
But as far as going forward, we're not offering that anymore. Are we offering it at a lesser rate? So that person, it's just like if you lost the rule of 90 as a retiree in the public, you're just going to retire whenever you feel you can afford it. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? We have a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And then our last business item, the resolution amending special compensation categories. Do we have a motion to approve? Supervisor Carlson, second. Supervisor Osnes, thank you. Back to you, Audrey.
All right, so we have two requests for additional stipend pay for employees. The interpreter pay is something that we already have, and it started back in 2015 at $7 an hour. Basically, the stipend pay is available to multilingual employees who offer to translate or interpret for the county in addition to their regular job duties. If employees aren't available to offer those services, then HHS contracts with third-party services, which typically range around $40 to $65 an hour. So it's an extreme cost savings to use employees to fill this position. The current stipend pay is $7 an hour. The request has been made to increase the stipend pay up to $8 per hour. Currently, we're using internal employees around 300 hours per year. So at that extra $1 an hour, it'll only impact the budget $300. The other one is abstractor stipend pay. This would be a new stipend pay that would be adding to the budget. The first deputy in the Register of Deeds has the experience and knowledge necessary to perform county abstractor duties, and she has been performing these job duties in addition to her regular job duties already. In order to provide increased customer service and provide assistance to other county departments with land and parcel and property issues or projects. So a request from the Register of Deeds to provide fair compensation to this employee by adding a stipend pay of $1.50 per hour for any hours that she works on those abstractor projects. She spends around 230 hours per year doing that abstractor job, so that would be an estimated budget cost of about $345 per year. That's it.
Questions, comments? Supervisor Van Summeren.
How do you keep track of that? I mean, so a person's doing her normal job, but then does some 15 minutes of interpreting. Who keeps track of that? How does that work? And the same way with the abstractor. How do you do that?
So we rely on the employee to keep track of their hours that they spend doing different positions, and then they add it into their timesheet accordingly for the week. And then the supervisor will obviously look at those timesheets for approval to ensure that those hours were spent doing those duties.
Yeah, our time tracking system is designed to track specific hours for specific projects. Highway, they charge hourly rates to different projects. Corporation Council to different projects. All the grants that staff work on, they'll split out their hours, so it's pretty common in our system.
Other questions, comments? All right, seeing none, we have a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Thank you, Audrey. Okay, now we are ready for our Sheriff Knutson and our annual report.
Good morning. Thank you. Well, you've all gotten our year-end of 2022 totals, and probably had, I know in years past I've kind of bounced around and talked about some of the highlights I thought, but are there any areas that you would like to delve into a little further or discuss? The question was on staffing. Overall, we had gotten up to, as I mentioned in one of the last meetings, very close to full. Now since then, we've got 2 jail openings, 1 patrol. We got a list going right now. I will say we are not getting as many applicants for patrol. I think we had 7, and we are keeping it open for another week. Dispatch, we're down 3. So overall, office-wise, we're 6, 7. But we're not getting that interest that we thought we were starting to get a little bit more of. As always, national events sometimes impact that. And I'd like to think that maybe these most recent gave us another bump in the road. I hope that levels off again. But we're still getting by. This summer, we are anticipating some staff shortages because of several planned FMLAs, military. We have on our roster, I'm actually kind of pleased about this, we have 19 current or retired military. So the current ones are still doing their month-long, and both of those happen to be for July this year. So about the time our FMLA hits too. So we will be on the schedule. We're going to have a reduced number on our night shift that we will be filling with overtime. We'll have 3 on the schedule. So it kind of hits us hard at that time. So
Supervisor Osnes?
And how are we doing in dispatch right now?
we're 3 short in dispatch. Currently, I think we did interviews last week, and a couple in the hopper that are good. All 3 in the hopper are good, so we're doing backgrounds on them. So we're getting by. Again, what does the climate look like for the future? The recruit classes in Eau Claire that I've been to have been 20, 25. There was a school that had been going on in River Falls at Chippewa Valley. I think it was an extension of that. That was a law enforcement program. And I want to say, did they close down? They had 3 the one time. Normally they ran in the 20s. They were down to 3, and I don't think they offer it in River Falls anymore. So that future probably, at this point, doesn't look real bright for continuing getting staffing.
And we're doing a lot better keeping folks here compared to where we were years ago, where we did some training here and off to the west they would go.
Our retention has greatly improved with some major staff changes. About 5 of them that we had to majorly remove. And now we've been very steady since at least last August. And very little turnover. So we continue to work at that. Jail population for yesterday was 108. As you know, we can house up to 185. But 108, anybody that's been down in the jail, there's the pod area, which is the actual cells, and then there's Huber dorms. The pod area with actual cells, and then the 9 special needs cells, that totals 108. We're at 108 today. So the overflow from that ends up in the Huber dorms. We've pushed the majority of the Hubers out on electronic home monitoring. There's about 20 Hubers out. So one of the drawbacks to pushing regular inmates into those Huber dorms is restrictions or lockdowns or no contacts. You know, those Huber dorms hold 15 or 20. So we're utilizing that. And actually we have about 20 females. None of them are in a locked cell. They're all in the Huber dorms because we don't have room down at the regular pod. So just some things to update and consider as we move forward, but that's where we're at with our jail population. And reminding that in July of 19, we were at 151.
Just a clarification then, the ones that you put out from Huber on home monitoring would normally be held at Huber?
Yes, they would normally, the old traditional Huber was you check out in the morning, go to work, you check back in. You're in 6 out of 7 days. You have to stay in 1 day. And that is by, once a court case is resolved, the judge rules that someone is eligible for Huber. So I can't arbitrarily put somebody out on Huber without the judge's, as part of their court case. So those that reside in Huber now, when I say most are out on EHM, I also still like to have a little bit of oversight. So we do a percentage of time, say someone has 3 months in for Huber, or eligible for Huber for 3 months. We'll keep them in for a certain percentage of time, say 21 days, to see if they can follow the rules. If within those 21 days they violate, come back, they have substances in them, or just aren't following the rules at all, and they're all out on bracelet as well. So even the Hubers have ankle bracelets. So if they're not charging their bracelet, if they're violating no contacts within that 21, they don't get to go out. I want to see how they're going to follow the rules early on. They can earn that then once they follow those rules and get out on EHM completely. So, and that's been working fairly well. We've had a couple over the last couple months that couldn't follow those rules within the first couple days. So,
Mr. Chair, would there be a possibility down the road that after a county board meeting and we could work something out with the sheriff, the folks that wanted to tour the jail facility could do that after one of our meetings? Is that a possibility?
Well, we have the annual jail inspection from the public safety. You're welcome to join that if you would like to tour it.
Yeah, usually in the spring.
Yeah.
Last time we did it in summer, but usually it's been in the spring.
Yeah, spring to summer. It's coming. Weather will be nice today.
Supervisor Leaf?
So the screening material that you were putting in the upper, is that finished?
no.
Okay, can you tell, I mean, I had the insider baseball being on PPJ to understand what that meant, so maybe explain that.
Actually, we just got an email this morning. They've got the plans all drawn up. Finishing meeting maybe at 2 o'clock today? Is that that? Yeah. So we're, I shouldn't say the finishing meeting, but the progression of it, but we're getting there.
Yep, so the issue was that you might maybe explain what the issue was that we're now trying to solve for.
Yeah, I had shown a video. It was kind of actually 2 videos, shocking, of activities within. Someone had tried to, if anybody's been in the jail, we have in certain blocks 2 tiers. lower tier with cells, upper tier. The upper tier, when the place was built, and many, many jails, there was no screening on that upper tier. There was a railing, but no screening that went all the way up. So there's always been that, you know, if somebody could jump over or fall over, fight, jailer get tossed over. Again, we've been fortunate. It's a rare occurrence even in jails. But all of a sudden here 1 month, we had one person that at 10 in the morning tied a sheet and tried to hang himself off that upper tier. Luckily, a couple other inmates stepped in, held him up. We got him cut down. Off to the hospital he went, came back. He was good, but it highlighted we need to seal that up. And then within a couple weeks, another one threatened to and had the sheet out. And so that really pushed us towards, okay, we need to do something. Eau Claire County had an inmate that had mental health. He dove off, and that cost that county a lot of money. And put the staff through a lot of trauma. So we're trying to mitigate as best we can for not only the safety of the inmates, safety of staff, but for any liabilities for the county.
Sheriff, we hear about, with regard to illegal drugs, the increase of fentanyl, and it's disturbing and concerning. Are we seeing a lot more, and are we able to do anything to get more of the Narcan out there? I know that you're on the criminal justice side of this, but are we able to do anything to help prevent deaths out there?
One of the programs that we have in the jail is a Narcan program. It's controversial for some, it's not for me, where we train the inmates how to use Narcan. And when they leave, they get Narcan. Some people don't like that. For me, I guess it's that, or we investigate deaths. And we don't want to do that. So that's how we've kind of been pushing out Narcan for that jail population. Publicly, I think there's places to get it. I know there's times we do search warrants at houses, drug houses, and there's a lot of Narcan in there. They're getting it from somewhere. So that stuff is out there. You had another question prior to that I was going to touch upon.
Are we seeing more deaths from it, from fentanyl?
I think we had, not deaths, but we had 24 overdose investigations. I think that was in there. We did just have an email from a neighboring county that said they had their first fentanyl death. Marijuana was laced with fentanyl. So even that marijuana component, and we knew that was coming, is going to start popping up more and more now.
Sheriff, what are your biggest concerns for the upcoming year?
Continues to be staffing. As I mentioned, we go down a couple people, we're at 3. That's a big deal for officer safety, for our response times, but it also has an impact on the budget as well when we're filling in overtime those shifts. So that's always the number one thing, is the safety of everybody involved, us, the citizens, and even those that we are attempting to take into custody. A lot different when we have 2 or 3 to try to arrest somebody than it is at 1. It makes it more difficult. So resources. Again, we are very fortunate on this western side, but we are just across the river from everything keeps popping, and I know we keep talking about that, but we're seeing it. We had another pursuit last night. Ended up stopping that gentleman, and stop sticks on the freeway. So last year we had the shooting on the freeway. There's a lot on the travels to and from and through St. Croix. So,
Supervisor Osnes.
Can you talk a little bit about our trips down to Winnebago and what the costs are on that?
well, the costs, glad you brought that up. Not quite with that question, but I'm going to lead into. We tried to look at what has changed over time of how long these calls are taking us. So we did from front end to back end on a OWI arrest. When you stop somebody, by the time you clear the call. But when we talk about clearing the call, it only means we clear it, we still have all the paperwork to do. So an OWI arrest takes about 2.5, almost 3 hours. Some things have changed over the years. More paperwork, many times a warrant needs to be obtained, judge has to sign it, all that. So that's added some time. The one that has actually really surprised me, not really surprised me, but just the average on an emergency detention, again, from the time we get the call and walk in the door of their house to the time we clear the call, which means we get back from whatever hospital we've gone to, and that is 13 hours. That's the average. What lowers that average is if we get to go to Eau Claire, if it's a safety plan, if it's up to Amory, that lowers it. Everything that keeps it up there, the 20 hours, the 24 hours, the 36 hours, those are those Winnebago trips. As we've talked about before, the people that take the call, 1 or 2, are not the 2 that end the call, 1 or 2. It covers 2 shifts. It takes 2 off of each of the shifts. And so you times that by the hours where we're sitting or transporting. I mean, what are we looking at for thousands? Not if we got to call somebody on overtime. Because when we send 2, it's either got to be somebody that's off, or we have to call somebody in, so there's an overtime component. And then hospital, the number of tests that are run are, I'm not a doctor, but even the doctors here say that Winnebago has asked for excessive amounts of tests, merely to keep the domino a little farther away because they don't have room either. It is a costly, timely endeavor.
And I can't imagine what the time would be to go down and pick somebody up from Winnebago to bring them back up to court and find out you've got to take them back down there again and then coming back up. That's got to be a huge amount of hours for staff.
Yep, and if, so the clock starts ticking when it's recognized that an emergency detention has to take place. So it's not when we walk in the door, but it's somewhere within that first hour. And once that hits, that triggers a 72 hours, they got to be back before a judge. Well, if we sit at a hospital for 24 hours to get them clear and get them down there, and then we drive back, the next day we're driving back to bring them back. And then if the judge finds probable cause, we send them back, and then we come back. It's kind of a messy process.
Sorry.
Is somebody working on a solution to try to eliminate that, find something better?
Sheriff, could I jump in while you give that a thought for a second? Because I know you're going to
I've got
say.
lots of thoughts,
I
but
know
go
you
ahead.
do. I was just going to add that Supervisor Telejohn and Supervisor Osnes and Bob Rohrt and I all spent a day in Madison about a week ago. And with every single representative and senator we met with, and we met with about half a dozen, we brought up this issue in spades. And we brought up our unfortunate effort last year that was a good effort, but failed to get a major grant that would have permitted basically the sheriff to bring a lot of these people to the healthcare campus for service, which would have saved tremendous amounts of time and money. So in that respect, we put the bug in the ear of several legislators on both sides of the aisle, and they were receptive. And of course, the governor this year is going to announce tonight that he's going to put in $500 million in new mental health service money, in addition to what we're already spending. So I think that everybody knows about the issue, that could do something about the issue. It's just been dragging on for years and years. Sheriff.
I couldn't have said it better. One thing, and there was supposed to be in Eau Claire, they were going to add 22 beds. Well, now I have not read it, and I heard that is now on the way or off the table. I don't know what happened. So where we thought we had a little bit of light coming towards us, got yanked away. I don't know where the 500 million is going to go. I hope it all doesn't go to Madison and Winnebago, because we really need something, not just us, this entire side of the state. We really need something over here.
Supervisor Van Summeren.
Mr. Sheriff, recently, and you alluded to it in your opening remarks, recently we've seen a lot of things happening around the nation. Memphis was one of the last ones about police officers who have gone awry, police officers who are racist and not thinking properly, I would say. So what are we doing to guard against it? How do you make certain that does not happen here in St. Croix County?
Background checks, psychological exams, and not lowering our standards. And I had mentioned that at a public protection meeting. I will not lower my standards to get more people. And that was through our staffing crisis. And I made it clear we can't lower our standards. We don't want that. The public doesn't want that. And I think Memphis was a perfect example of deviating just to get bodies. We can't do that. So.
Supervisor Hanson.
Yeah, at this point, I'd like to, I know we do a little bit of this, it sounds like you're, I don't know, sucking up if you allow the term, but I want to compliment you because the answer to that question is the culture of the Sheriff's Department. I've spent time with many of the deputies and had a chance to observe that there's a certain culture with the Sheriff's Department under the current leadership, and they are very respectful, community-minded. They're people who care about people, and I feel good that we have a department that's less likely to be intrusive of people's life and disrespectful than many agencies across the country. So that's why we have an incredible Sheriff's Department, and I'm proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hanson. I think we all share your sentiments. Other questions or comments for our sheriff?
I should have hired Taylor Mavis as speechwriter.
Thank you, Sheriff. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next we're going to hear from our Justice Services Annual Report. Phil Galley. Phil?
Good morning. So I'll just provide kind of a brief overview, and then certainly if there are any questions. But Justice Support, just as a reminder, provides oversight to 3 different departments, or divisions, I guess. The CJCC, so our Community Justice Collaborating Council, is one. Our Adult Treatment Court, so that is the other one, and then our pretrial division. So those are kind of our 3 buckets, if you will, in pretrial. A couple of highlights for our treatment court. We continue to operate under the TAD grant, so our Treatment Alternatives and Diversion Grant, which we've now received since 2014. The big change there is for this year, for 2023, we're able to secure an additional roughly $30,000 in funding to support a part-time data entry person, data analyst, to support both the treatment court as well as the diversion program. So that TAD grant supports not only our department, but also the DA's office and a full-time employee that they have. So that was a big change in a good way. So that our budget for this year, for 2023, for TAD is roughly $240,000, and that does also include the county's cash match. So we continue to operate with that. Our pretrial division. So again, historically, pretrial was housed in the Sheriff's Department from 2017 until 2021, roughly. So it's only been this civilian model. So that's kind of the big change that we're undertaking here. I call it actually a rebranding our pretrial. So we're roughly 18 months into this where we have this new civilian model for pretrial. Some of the highlights, I think one thing that I wanted to point out, and the sheriff just got done talking about their numbers in the jail. So again, pretrial, when people are arrested and they're booked, they go through the intake process with a judge. They're given possibly a bail and then conditions, and they then report to us for drug and alcohol testing, GPS monitoring. So those are some of the things that we monitor for compliance. It costs the county roughly $8.40 a day to monitor somebody on pretrial supervision, which when you look statistically across the country for other forms of community supervision, so probation and parole at the back end of the criminal justice system, that's roughly about average, is what it costs to supervise somebody in the community. Whereas if you look at keeping somebody in jail or in prison, that number is significantly higher, $60 a day, and that's probably on the low end, depending on where we're looking at. So there is a cost savings with what we're doing for the county, and we do provide that to compliance. With pretrial, speaking of compliance, just a couple numbers to highlight, and I know we have a graph on this, and it's in your packet. But the two things for pretrial, and this is, you can actually go back to that previous slide. That's a perfect one if you want to go up just one. Perfect, right there, those outcome measures. So two things in pretrial that we're largely concerned with are, and statute dictates this first one, is return to court. So individual goes through intake, they bond out, they come see us. The idea is for them to return to court. So that appearance rate being close to 90% is really good. If you look at the national average, it is somewhere closer to 80%. No, excuse me, 83%. So we're roughly 7% higher, again, across the board there. That's important. And then certainly those last 2 points speak to public safety, which is another huge point of pretrial. We monitor folks to make sure that they don't get rearrested while they're out pending a crime. So the fact that we are seeing folks that our folks are being monitored, anywhere between 94 and 99% are arrest-free, and certainly violent arrest-free, are pretty excellent numbers, I guess. So again, if you look at the national average, we are well above. The national averages on those are roughly 79%. So actually, we're quite a bit higher. By no means are we done with our mission with this and say, okay, we've got everything figured out. No, as we continue to rebrand and look at the resources that we have as a department, we hopefully can increase those numbers. Again, those are highlights. I think just maybe some other updates as far as treatment court goes. Treatment court historically has had a partnership with our Health and Human Services Department for the last 15 or so years, where they have provided counseling for our individuals. That is changing right now out of necessity, some staffing challenges at Health and Human Resources. So we are in the process of developing a partnership with Programs for Change at Hudson Hospital, and that will be our partner we anticipate moving forward. We're excited about that. So that is something, as we look as a challenge into 2023, we could call it a challenge. That's something in treatment court that we're looking towards. I think as far as challenges in pretrial, it's just remaking ourselves, rebranding ourselves. What does pretrial look like in St. Croix County? I think there's a bigger question of what pretrial looks like here in the state of Wisconsin as well as nationally. You probably all have read reports about eliminating cash bail and some other things that are taking place in the state of Illinois and California and otherwise. So as pretrial changes across the country, I think we will remake ourselves here in St. Croix County a little bit as well. Drug testing, that chart right there in the blue shows the majority of what we do, just over 51% of the services we provide is drug testing related, and that certainly will continue to track that way. I think the biggest thing for us is drug testing is making sure that we are testing appropriately, not setting people up to fail. Certainly there's a reason why we test people for drug and alcohol use for compliance purposes and to get them the help that they need. But I think also maybe a bit of a philosophical shift for us. Why are we drug testing people? What's the point? So something else we want to do in 2023 is answer that question, or at least move the needle forward why we're doing that. As far as what we're seeing in justice services for drugs, we do see a high rate of folks testing positive for marijuana. That's not terribly surprising. And then our methamphetamine numbers are quite high as well, probably not terribly surprising to anyone. But as we move forward, hopefully we can continue to reduce those numbers as much as possible. Those are my main highlights. I'm happy to take any questions.
Supervisor Osnes.
I've got two questions for you. Right now, Hudson is the only place we do drug testing, is that correct?
That's right.
And are we looking at any other potential sites for that? That's my first question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now, let me take a step back for a second. Justice Support Services provides drug testing for folks that are on diversion through the DA's office, a treatment court, as well as pretrial. So those are kind of our three buckets there of folks. As we move forward, because of the makeup of our county, it would be helpful, I think, if we could have drug testing offered in New Richmond at the Services Center. It's kind of an idea that I have for the next, maybe a longer term goal for our department. We have a part-time drug tester in our department, something that I'm looking towards for 2024's budget is to make that position full-time and maybe split that between Hudson and New Richmond. Of course, that would take maybe a little bit of discussion with facilities and with Health and Human Services to maybe borrow some of their space, but that would be very helpful for us and for the citizens that we serve. If we have someone who lives in Glenwood, them coming all the way to Hudson 2 or 3 times a week to drug test is not really setting them up for success, I don't think.
And then the second question is, how does one, or what's the process of going through the drug court treatment program? How do you get into that to start with, and what are some of the things that you've got to do through that whole process?
Sure. Yeah, it's a rigorous process. So again, we try to get folks in and out within 15 months in drug court. So again, treatment court, drug court, they're very popular in the United States. They've been around for roughly 40 years. It's ideally a way to address somebody's underlying criminogenic need, drugs, alcohol, mental health. So we receive referrals from clients, from their attorneys, from other judicial system representatives. And it's, again, we have 4 different phases that we send them through, and they have to pass along, time being sober, drug testing, meet with their counselor, work, self-help groups, all of those things. But yeah, we receive referrals from a number of different places. 18 months is really about how long it takes somebody to finish treatment court. So for those of you that have maybe sat in on some of our graduations, which I'll do a quick plug here, we have one next Wednesday morning, if you'd like to attend. It's a lot of work. Some folks, even it takes them a couple years, and it's not a smooth path. Judge Nordstrand is good about mentioning that. The folks experience some hiccups, but that's part of the process. We don't expect somebody to come into treatment court and say, okay, I'm ready to go and I'm going to finish here in 6 or 7 months. We anticipate there will be some challenges.
And it's an eye-opener. I've been fortunate enough to sit in on I don't know how many different drug court sessions, but to see the progress on some of these people is just unbelievable. And if you've got the extra time on a Wednesday at 8:30, take the time to go up and sit in on that. It takes about an hour or so. But just to see the progress that these folks have made, it's just amazing. Staff has done a great job.
And the treatment court is, for those that haven't sat in or maybe aren't terribly familiar with the process, it is a team. It's a therapeutic environment. So we have a treatment court coordinator, we have a case manager, we have the judge, the DA, someone's from the sheriff's department. We have public defender's office, law enforcement, so we have a number of different areas that are represented, and they really kind of wrap around somebody, hold them accountable, but also provide them a path that maybe if it were the traditional court path that they wouldn't be so successful.
Any other questions or comments? I'll also echo your comments, Supervisor Osnes. I love going to those graduations. The stories give you a lot of faith of the human spirit and what people can do. It's a great program. Thank you. Supervisor Fiedler.
I just would add that Phil is very modest in the things he and his staff do. Just among other things, he mentioned it very slightly, but he staffs the CJCC and its various subcommittees. And I know our chairman of our CJCC is in the back of the room. Hello, Judge. And Phil does a great job on that. But one of those added duties that he didn't even mention today is something that we kind of added to him, both from the PPJ and from the CJCC, that he's in the process of doing the first real heavy-duty statistical study of our entire justice system. And he's gotten reasonable support from the various entities in the county, but I would just want to emphasize that I hope that all of the entities that have to work with Phil and that they respond to his overtures for assistance, because if he can just get 10 to 15 bullet points from each of them, that makes his job a lot easier to come back to us in maybe 3 or 4 months with a very comprehensive study that will then drive what we do with the budget and other things in this area. But you know, he didn't even mention that, and it's a huge project that he's undergoing. Thanks, Phil.
Any other questions or comments? Hey, thank you, Phil. Appreciate it. Okay, does anyone have any requests for future agenda items? All right, seeing none, any correspondence from our county clerk? No? Okay. Okay, a couple announcements. I know that we're trying to schedule a committee of the whole meeting for after the April election regarding the 2024 budget process. We get to start all over again. Do you want to mention any possible dates, Ken? Or?
Yeah, we talked about a couple of dates. One would be Thursday, April 6th at 9 a.m. immediately following public protection meeting, or the following week, Wednesday, April 12th at 8:30 a.m. So I don't know if there's a strong preference either way on those, but those were a couple of the dates that we're looking at to keep us on track for getting the 2024 budget rolling. Very long. Yeah. It'll be 2 hours roughly.
No, yeah, it shouldn't be more than a couple hours. We're just going to hear from staff and basically on their needs and requests so that we get our preliminary feel for what we're going to be looking at for the following year budget-wise.
Yeah. Like Chair Long said, it's where the department heads come in and sort of give us where their 2024 projections are, what new things are they going to be looking at, which will then help us establish the budget priorities. So we'll be back at the May county board with a list of priorities for approval. And then that gives the marching orders for the rest of the budget process. So it's pretty important step in the whole process so that everything starts off on the right foot.
Supervisor Shirley?
I would suggest maybe we do the 12th, considering that we have that referendum item on there. Then we'll know which way that goes and kind of get our hands around what's going forward. But that gives us an extra week.
Can't underestimate the importance of creating those budget priorities, because that really starts the whole process for Ken and all the department heads on really it's our job to set those priorities, and that sets all the groundwork for that whole budget process. So it's a really very, very critical part of that budget. I also just want to remind everybody that starting in March, then we'll be back to our regularly scheduled 5 p.m. meeting time rather than in the morning. And then I believe Supervisor Osnes wanted to remind us on an item as well.
Just a reminder, at the end of February 28th, and March First, in Madison, capital ambassadors not capital ambassadors, but county supervisors are invited to come down and spend 2 days looking at the budget. A number of folks from the different departments will be there. Governor and his staff, it's just giving you the nitty-gritties and getting into what we're going to be looking at as far as money that could be coming our way over the course of 2 days. So if anybody would like to go, let Christine know, and she can help you get set up. Thank you.
Okay, looks like we'll tentatively put the Wednesday the 12th, did I get that right? For our committee of the whole, that will start at 8:30 in the morning, and hopefully we'll be out of here by lunch. Any other announcements or comments? Okay, hearing none, it's 9:36. We are adjourned.